I can hear Nick chewing his potato chips. I like this song.
Yeah, that's
I'm
good.
a fan. I'm a Jelly Roll fan.
Yeah, are you?
Yes.
All right. I didn't know that, but
I guess
right.
I didn't know that either, but I like that song anyways.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff.
He's got an interesting story, that guy.
Yes, he does.
And we'll get to it here in a minute, I suppose. But the biggest thing when I was doing some research on him is how he got the Jelly Roll name. I, of course, thought it was because he's a larger individual.
That's what I always thought.
Right?
Yeah.
That is not the case. It is, if I remember this correctly, it's like the layers of a jelly roll because he has so many layers to his life story.
Not really, but
I think it's a story.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
it mentions that in the thing.
Oh, you got it? Okay, perfect. All right, cool. Well, we'll get to that here in a minute. Then. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome to the GEOHOLICS.
201.
201. We are on the other side.
We are. I'm not used to saying the two.
I know.
I got a little choked up there, I think.
It was a good episode, that episode 200.
It was great.
Yeah,
I can't wait. I can't wait for people to listen to that one. It was awesome. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's a point where you just stop saying the episode number and it's just known as the guest? You know what I mean?
No, I think
Joe Rogan doesn't say episode 1542.
Yeah, I think once you get into the thousands.
Oh, is that the benchmark?
Maybe, yeah, or maybe we're like 500. Like,
okay, that's probably more likely.
I think we're still in the number column because we're really excited to get this many episodes.
All right, let's. Our good friend Dr. Nick's with us this evening. How you been, buddy?
How we doing? I'm good. Glad to be back.
What's new with you?
I'm just glad we made it past like episode 20. We're like 10 times past that. Holy cow. Somehow they keep the lights on. You guys are doing something right. And you know, the scary thing was, I think I was like episode 1 or 2 after Abraham Lincoln. Yeah.
You were episode 2.
Yeah, that's right.
And Mark Taylor was 3.
Was he?
Yep.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And
so awesome.
And PETA was 100.
Oh, she's an afterthought.
Oh, jeez. No, I'm doing good, guys.
Hang on, let me go ahead and text her. So when you hear this, you're not an afterthought.
She immediately logs in. We have another guest.
Right.
Yeah, we could not do it without PETA, that's for sure.
Yeah, remember,
hands down.
And remember, this is live on YouTube. So.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry, PETA.
Sorry, PETA. We love you.
Oh man, probably getting to be conference season for you, huh?
Yeah, we're starting to tee up some travel. I think we're all going to be at Geo Week next month. We've got a couple ESRI conferences coming.
Yeah. Looking forward to that one.
State shows. Yeah, it's going to be good. Yeah, Geo Week's always a blast. Denver's I don't know about y'all. I like the Mile High City.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, we love it.
Big fan. Unless your flight gets canceled because it snows.
Right.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you don't like it so much. But and of course we have producer Sean. What's up, buddy?
Hello.
How you been?
Very good. You know, it's that time of the year.
Yeah.
The holidays are done. The other holidays done. You know, we're in full weeks now.
Yeah.
And we're in Phoenix. It's the busiest time to be in this area.
And the best time.
Obviously the best time. You got Barrett Jackson coming up. You got the Open coming up. You got the Super Bowl. And then we hop on and go to Denver for Geo Week. And usually this time of year you blink and then it's Valentine's Day. And then the rest of the year just kind of rolls through. But it's a great time to be here. You know, just gearing up. What about you? What's new?
It's warming up a little bit too fast for me, though. It was like 75 today.
Yeah, I know. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was. Me, just busy, man. Just busy with work. Been traveling a lot.
Yeah.
It's been great. I mean, lots of things, lots of really good things happening.
Yeah.
I'm super excited.
It's an exciting time to be in the positions that we're in because there's a lot happening.
Definitely. And we're just about ready to finalize our 2024 Friends of the Program.
Yes.
So that list should officially get released probably next week for sure.
Yep.
For sure. But super excited. We got, of course, a bunch of the ones that have been loyal to us.
Pretty much everyone's coming back
from day one. We got some
new exciting ones.
Yep. We're going to mention one of them this evening. Probably a couple, as a matter of fact. So yeah, everything's good, and just very, very thankful for our listeners, our friends of the program, everybody involved that keeps this thing going.
Absolutely.
And it keeps me motivated. I still look forward to this as much as I did probably the first week. but with a lot less anxiety.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot less anxiety.
Yes, that's
For
correct.
sure. All right. Tell us about that opening number. buddy.
You talked about him. That
Yeah.
was Jelly Roll.
Okay.
That was a song called Need a Favor. Here we go. Jelly Roll, aka, you know his name? Jason DeFord.
Did not know that.
Is an American rapper, singer, and songwriter known for his versatility in blending various music genres. He is from Antioch, Tennessee. His journey in the music industry began in the early 2000s. His stage name is a nod to his multi-layered nature of his music, representing a fusion of hip-hop, country, and rock influences. Jelly Roll gained recognition for his raw and honest storytelling, often drawing from his own life experiences. His authenticity and unique style have earned him a dedicated fan base, and he continues to be a notable figure in the contemporary music scene.
Yeah, he seems like such a genuine human being.
Yeah, well, when you got a name like Jelly Roll, you're probably not fake.
Yeah, very humble.
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly.
Yeah, his wife Bunny.
Yes.
Yes, interesting couple for
Yes.
sure. No doubt about it.
The dichotomy of a couple is pretty amazing
Yes,
sometimes.
but it
right?
apparently works, so good for them.
You know,
Yep.
that's what they say.
All right, let's move along. We are in the get this. Are you ready? A new one.
A new one.
David Evans and Associates Studio.
Who the heck
this
are those
evening.
guys?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's cool
Kent's
that I
never
actually
heard of
get
that
to
company
talk
before.
about the
Never heard of
company I
this
work
company.
for now.
Okay, all right.
A little bit about David
Literal
Evans.
shameless plug.
Little shameless plug, yes. David Evans and Associates,
Mhm.
aka
We
DEA,
call him DEA.
is a recognized leader in the design and management of complex transportation, land development, water resources, and energy projects nationwide. They combine the talents of engineers, surveyors, planners, hydrographers, landscape architects, and natural resource scientists to provide their clients access to a complete range of services. That's a long sentence.
And
Straight
you got
from the website.
You got to add in one podcast host.
And one podcast host, yes. DEA is consistently ranked among Engineering News Record's top 100 peer design firms in the U.S. and among leaders in many other local markets. To find out more, visit DEAINC.com. How about that?
It's
Good stuff.
different. Yeah,
Good stuff.
I think
I like the variety.
Yeah, I like checking up there.
Yep. It's going to be a good year, no doubt about it. All right. Next up, we have the Airworks. What are we doing? Quote or trivia tonight?
I have two quotes.
Two
today.
quotes. So to find Airworks, go to airworks.io.
Yeah, they're one of those really smart, software. Like
Yes.
when the dot is like .io, you
Yeah.
know, it's something super techy and
Indeed.
above my head.
100%.
So I picked a couple since it is the new year. I picked a couple of New Year's ish quotes.
Cool.
The first one, and I liked it because it made me think a little bit, and I still don't know what to think about it. But a worthy New Year's resolution, perhaps, is to take no hatred into the new year without requiring it to restate its purpose.
Okay.
As long as you take the fortune cookie with you into the new year, you're good to go.
Right? But I like that. It made me think a little bit.
That's good. I like it.
And then this next one's is a right up our alley, I guess. I hope that, and this is definitely for you. I hope that in this year to come, you make mistakes. Because if you're making mistakes, then you are making new things, trying new things, learning, living, pushing yourself, changing yourself,
Yeah.
changing your world. You're doing things you've never done. And more importantly, you're doing something.
I think a lot of that is going to happen this year. All the above.
I hope you make a lot of mistakes this
Let's
year.
circle back on January 1st next year.
Okay.
Let's see how that goes.
Let me put a note in my calendar.
Right. Next up, we have the GeoSearch Job of the Week. So this week's a little bit different. This week, GeoSearch, this comes from their Career Corner Professional Pointers. Okay. So this is
okay.
ways to supercharge your job application. Okay.
I
Tip
like it.
number one.
All right.
Craft a standout resume. Tailor it to the job, showcasing your unique skills. Include a cover letter that highlights how your skills and experience align with the job description. Express your enthusiasm for the position.
Are you saying don't ask ChatGPT to make me a resume?
Although ChatGPT could probably create a pretty good resume.
No, don't disagree.
Tip number two, highlight your achievements. Don't just list tasks, showcase your accomplishments. Be proud of that,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Tip number three, keyword magic. Sprinkle relevant industry and technical keywords throughout.
Okay.
Tip number four, light up your network. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is current and professional. Connect with other professionals on LinkedIn, attend industry events, both virtual and in person. Hey, I'm a huge LinkedIn person, big believer in LinkedIn for so many different
Did
reasons.
they put another tip when you're in LinkedIn? Go ahead and follow the GEOHOLICS.
They didn't, but you did. Thank goodness. And last but not least, tip number 5, ready for exciting new opportunities. Visit geosearch.com today. Check out their job board and connect with their team.
Yeah.
GeoSearch, I like this, your compass to a brighter career.
Ooh, that's pretty catchy.
Really good, really good. All right, here we go. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
We're going to get our guest in
Let's
here.
get our guest in here. Of course, our guest this week is sponsored by GeoMax Positioning. You can visit them at geomax-positioning.com. And we have Linda Foster with us this evening. A little bit about Linda. Born in, I'm going to butcher this, I should have asked her before we got on here, Chadron, Nebraska? Maybe? Is that close, Linda? Chadron, Nebraska, grew up on a cattle ranch in the far southwestern corner of South Dakota. God bless her. She obtained her bachelor's degree in geological engineering from South Dakota Mines.
School of Mines. Yeah.
And her master's degree in GIS from Penn State University.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. In her free time, she pretty much spends a lot of time with her family, but she does love mountain biking and photography. She is the global manager of land records and cadastre at ESRI, and she is proud to be in an executive leadership position with the National Society of Professional Surveyors, currently serving as vice president.
We'll get more into that, I'm sure.
A lot going on here. And last but not least, I love this, passionate about the fusion of all things geospatial.
Oh, that is right up our alley.
Man, oh man. Linda, welcome to the GEOHOLICS. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, and thanks for having me.
You bet. Hold on a second here.
You all right?
I didn't have this pulled up. All right. We started out typically with the Trimble Geospatial Icebreaker. This one's pretty deep, and I'll be curious if Sean, especially, I know you didn't read it before the show, so you're gonna have to think about it. But here we go. Imagine you had the power to change one societal norm. What would it be and why? Who wants to go first?
I already got mine.
You do?
Yeah.
Jump right up there.
All right. Well, I'm going to steal one from one of our previous guests.
Really?
And not necessarily, but I'm going to steal the quote that I still have on my board is, take the shame out of failure.
Okay.
And the societal norm is
failure's not good.
The failure's not good.
I like it. That's good. Way to go. Linda, you got one?
I do. I think I would have to say oversharing. That's just something that, as time goes on and time goes by, and, we're all in technology, and we all have grown up through social media, and it just amazes me how much people will share and where they share it and how they share it.
Such a good one.
Like, I do not care what you had for breakfast this morning, Kent. And I don't need to see a picture of it.
That's my wife that posts that. That's not me. How about you, Nick? You got one?
Yeah, definitely wearing pants. Totally overrated.
Totally overrated.
Totally.
Yes. It works, though.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. I guess they have some purpose, yeah.
They do have a purpose. What about you, Kent? What do you got?
What is mine? Looking at Sean.
You're looking at me for inspiration.
I think body shaming.
Yes. Okay.
That's bad. It's so bad because in the
quit
societal
looking
norm.
at me. Quit looking at me when you say that.
Societal norm is, everybody needs to be skinny and in shape and beautiful and this and that. And oh man, I think social media probably plays a massive role in this. And it's just,
but it did exist before.
It did, of course.
So,
but the social media
definitely didn't get any better.
Yeah. Times a gazillion.
Yeah, right? I think a lot of people would agree with you on that.
Okay, let's get to know Linda a little bit. So, Linda, you grew up on a cattle ranch. That's interesting. Do you have any memorable experiences, or is there any way that growing up that way may have shaped your values and perspective on life in general?
Oh, most definitely. Tons and tons of memorable experiences. That could be a whole episode all of its own. But in all seriousness, unbelievable experience. I mean, it teaches you so many really valuable lessons in life. When you're basically making your living off the land, or you're dependent on the land to survive, it's pretty humbling. I mean, it teaches you grit and perseverance, because there's so many factors that are out of your control. Obviously, with nature and climate and weather and living, breathing, creatures and things like that. But it's also very rewarding. There's a lot of pride in what you do accomplish and the successes you have. So I think really what it did for me is provided a good baseline of just grit, being able to persevere through and keep on going even when things are not going your way.
Yeah. I love the perseverance, resilience, obviously, and work ethic, right?
Right. Some would call it orneriness. I mean, I guess you could label it that too, but
you're in great company. I read recently Jeff Bezos, one of the most wealthy men on the earth. He grew up on a cattle ranch in Texas and on his grandfather's ranch, and he attributes a lot of his work ethic and things similarly to you, Linda, to what he learned on the ranch.
Yeah, for sure. Big believer in that. Hard work breeds good work ethic.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I didn't mention, you are a PLS, GISP,
correct,
and MGIS. Tell me what MGIS is.
MGIS is Master of Geographic Information Systems. So that's the nod to my graduate degree right there.
There you go. So I wanted to establish the credibility there. You see what I did?
That's a lot of letters.
It's a lot of letters, yeah. I started misspelling them when I was typing this in. So at ESRI, tell us about ESRI. What do you love about working for a company like that?
Oh, ESRI is fantastic. It's a purpose-driven company. If there's a problem, we want to solve it. And, it's a very passionate group of people from all corners of the world, which makes our teams extremely diverse and multi-dimensional, and just really the passion. And we have such a strong community as well. We're really well connected to our user community. There's a lot of direct access and a lot of collaboration, and which really makes it a joy to be able to participate in that and watch, people have needs, and the needs change over time. Obviously, our challenges change and things like that. So it's never a dull moment. There's always more to develop and try to figure out how to conquer.
Yeah, that's a great answer. How many people does ESRI employ? Do you have an idea?
I think ESRI Inc., I think we're over 5,000.
5,000,
So when I say, ESRI Inc., that's a core ESRI, but of course we have a distributor network and those types of things as well.
Yep. And you've been with ESRI for how long?
I'll be going on 2 years.
2 years.
So
cool.
here in July. Yep.
What were you doing before that?
So before that, I worked in private consulting for 17 years. So consulting, engineering, and surveying firm, regional firm, and essentially built the geospatial program in that company from the ground up. So it was a blast. I loved consulting as well.
Got it.
I mean, who doesn't?
I suppose.
There are moments, as we all know.
There are moments.
Yes, there are.
And deadlines, lots of them.
So I got to ask about getting a geological engineering degree, and I mean that's close to me. I'm a geotech guy. So talk a little bit about how you got started with that and kind of how that got you into your career path now.
So geological engineering, really, I guess I was drawn to that because of my roots growing up, in a resource-based environment. I loved being outside. I was intrigued by rocks and dirt and, maps and all of that type of stuff. And when looking around, dollars and cents played into it. Not a lot of money there. So looking at, state schools that would provide some opportunity, and found geological engineering, and hey, this looks pretty cool. And, there's a lot of variety in it. And so, like any young person, you kind of pick a path and start walking and see where it takes you. And it ended up taking me, my career is like everyone's. You have twists and turns, and you set out expecting that it's going to be this in your mind. And, as you learn over time, it, quite often is very different, which mine was, but in all good ways. So.
Sure. I have to wonder, growing up on a farm and constantly being in the dirt and digging ditches and all that stuff, maybe that led you to it, like subliminally. You never know.
Why did you assume she digs ditches?
That's what you do on farms. You dig things.
Fun fact for you all here that probably nobody knows about me. My great grandfather was a land surveyor, and my
Really?
grandfather, yeah, my grandfather, same side of the family, was also. He never went to school for geology, but he was like a geology nut. I mean, he was one of those guys that has boxes of rocks and massive collection, and so it's always been eerie to me. Like, I wonder if that was a genetic thing or just coincidence. I don't know.
See? Interesting.
Oh, geez, there's Linda sharing with us.
Yeah, really.
We're getting deep now.
Your genealogy there, but
that's great.
So how did you go? And then talk about a little bit about how did you transition? You just you didn't graduate geological engineering and then say, you know what, I think I'm going to get a master's in GIS. Like, how did you transition into that field?
Yeah, so interesting story. I was introduced to GIS really actually in high school, believe it or not. I was a student working for the U.S. Forest Service, and back in the command line days and what have you, I had a little bit of introduction there. Hung over digitizing table in the summers, with the puck digitizing.
Oh yeah.
Hated it, swore I would never deal with GIS in my life, so that set the trajectory for me. Ended up in one class in college, but also got introduced to land surveying in college through my geological engineering degree. So fast forward, when I was graduating, geological engineering is, of course, resource heavy. You would think mining, petroleum, oil and gas, or environmental. At the time I graduated, resources were in the gutter. Markets were down. Hiring was not happening. And so, that's where one of those twists or turns happens in your career. And I always envisioned being in an oil field or, in a mine, working in that type of environment. But then I ended up getting hired in this civil engineering consulting firm, engineering and surveying. And I had done GIS through all of my internships. It just kept coming back to me. I just, whatever, but couldn't shake it. It kept coming along. And then pretty soon I was like, started really embracing it and seeing how it all works together, how it comes together. Because I was a degreed engineer, I had the engineering background for that type of problem solving, but then also having the geospatial component as well, I could see things maybe a little bit differently. And so that's what really led to me launching a geospatial division in a private consulting firm.
Interesting. So we could go a bunch of different directions with this conversation right now, but let's keep it on the straight and narrow.
Right.
So I want to get a better understanding about, what a day in the life at ESRI looks like for you in the position that you're in as global manager of land records and cadastre.
So great question. And part of why I love my job is because it's full of variety. I'm a person that I love variety. I love change. I love different things, learning things. And it's a fantastic position for that. As you might imagine, being a global position, there's been, a pretty good learning curve for me, learning the global nature of our industry, surveying around the world, land management, land administration around the world. But it's very intriguing. And, really my role is bringing industry insight inside the company to our teams, to our folks that are working, on building what we build, but also taking the cutting edge technology that we're working on inside the company and bringing it back out into industry. So we can infuse it out, to all of our user communities and all of our folks that are doing the work every day. So as you might imagine, that's a lot of variety. There's all kinds of different things, teams that I get to be a part of, obviously events and activities and leadership roles, in industry. So just a tremendous amount of variety. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, talk about learning something new every day. Jeez.
Yes.
Does it allow you to travel quite a bit then, or?
It does. I have the opportunity
Awesome.
to travel far and wide, which is really, really neat because you just meet so many incredible people and learn, like I said, the differences in surveying and geospatial and how similar we are around the world, yet how different we are as a profession and how we practice and our challenges. Those are the things that are really intriguing to me as you go along and learn those things.
Linda, I'd be interested. So, in the GIS community and the survey community, sometimes, in the past didn't always get along the greatest. There's a fun acronym in the survey community that's, GIS stands. Yeah, we won't talk about that. But you have such an interesting position because you are at the pinnacle GIS company of the world, right? And you're at the top of the survey chain within that organization. So you get to experience the nexus of GIS and land survey and engineering and CAD and all these kind of Venn diagram of geospatial professions. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, like have you seen that transition, and do you feel acceptance in these different GIS markets? Any insight into that GIS survey potential friction or now love relationship? Or
Good question. I like that.
It's a great one. And really, I would say it's still a work in progress. I've seen a tremendous amount of change from my career, the early days in my career. When I started, I like to laugh and say I felt like I was walking in the headwinds all the time because, I felt like I could see the value and the benefit, and we were applying it successfully. We were growing good business by, integrating all of it, essentially by, leveraging all the different pieces and applying them to what we were trying to do for our clients and our customers. At the end of the day, what we were tasked with is to solve our customers' problems, right? And our clients' problems in the best way possible. But it wasn't popular. At the time, most people didn't see it. They didn't get it. And there was a tremendous amount of friction in the industries. That's evolving very much so. I wouldn't certainly say that it's reached equilibrium at this point, but we're well on our way. And there's a lot of things. I'm sure we'll probably get to talking about more of this as we go through the evening here, but there's been so much change in the last 2 decades. Let's just park it at that. 3 decades, if you want to really get down to it, that I would say really is when the evolution started to happen. But definitely we're collaborating, we're working together. The vision, I think, is becoming clearer across the spectrum of the professions, and it's a really exciting time, because there is a lot of change. Of course, we have young folks coming in with fresh perspectives, different ideas. We have a generation of folks that are retiring out, and so that creates opportunity, creates change, different perspectives, and different dynamics. And so it's a super exciting time right now, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, don't get me going on this because I, as a professional surveyor for 30 plus years, I think surveyors missed the boat when it came to GIS. And now there's a incline of the number of GISPs and a decline of the number of PLSs, so yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate.
We talk about that too much.
Every college has a GIS program, and the number of
and
surveyor
those programs are growing, and the survey departments are eliminating. So
yeah. So Linda, on that note, though, I would be curious, from your NSPS perspective, what input do you have on that situation?
As far as the direction that NSPS is going in that vein?
Well, just like looking at the direction surveying is going versus the direction that, the GIS profession is going.
I really think that they're converging in many ways. We obviously still are working on, defining, delineating, figuring out, the roles specifically. But really and truly, there is so much. I like to look at it more as we're kind of walking in partnership, the two communities, or we should be, by and large, because of, it all comes down to what's the purpose of what it is you're doing. What at the end of the day, what are you tasked with? What's your responsibility, and how should that be best carried out? And the work that land surveyors traditionally do, the work that GIS professionals do, it's merging together more and more. And I have a diagram that I love with, it's an upside down triangle. We've got geodesy at the bottom, and then we have land surveying, and then we have, everything up to the digital twin, all wrapped up in the wrapper of GIS. And so really we're all in it together.
Sure. Sure.
And
I think you touched on something just a little bit ago about like the younger folks that are getting involved in these professions. Like even the younger surveyor that comes out of college is kind of like a hybrid. You know, they've probably had a bunch of GIS classes in addition to their survey classes, and they're more. I don't want to say accepting of GIS, but the older generation of surveyors, the ones that are, at the retirement age now, that type thing,
Right.
as they ride off into the sunset and these younger surveyors come up, I definitely see that convergence happening for
Or it's
sure.
like that Venn diagram starting to
They
could become one, and
Yeah.
now there's only a couple outliers that
Yeah.
don't fall in both.
Right. Exactly. We need to work together. It's everybody's benefit.
Absolutely.
Especially surveyors, because they're
100%. You're not right. I mean, you're not wrong. But yeah, you got something, Nick?
No, I was just thinking to myself, here in Texas, we have two programs that I'm pretty familiar with and associated with. At Texas A&M Corpus Christi, at the Conrad Blucher Institute, we have a 4-year surveying degree, and they absolutely, it's surveying and GIS. I think it's literally in the title, but it is on a path to licensure. You are going to be an RLS, but you absolutely have to take those GIS classes. You come out probably with your Part 107 drone stuff as well. I mean, so you're getting a plethora of tools. So I would agree with that. And even the other school I'm associated with around here is the Austin Community College I've talked about before on the show. But ACC, they have several hundred students a year, and it's the geospatial engineering program. So you can learn CAD, you can learn GIS. It's a 2-year program. And I mean, 200 students a year. Holy cow. I mean, and those students are just getting yanked up as fast as they're coming out. And so I see that fusion happening as well. Just think it through it a little bit, but
yeah.
And I think that's a good point, Nick, because as with anything, our industry is rapidly changing. We're seeing a lot of change. And of course, the education institutions, are in it with us as well. And they're trying to figure out how to best adapt, how to equip, students for the current industry needs. And so there's transition, I think, happening there as well in how the programs are structured, what they're teaching. Some are very immersed, some are still, I would call, more traditionally survey oriented. But we're seeing, I think, more of a fusion across the board in those education programs as well. And I think we'll continue to see that as we move forward.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, we're all measuring, right? And not everything has to be measured by a surveyor, right? We have to come to grips with that.
Have you?
Me? Oh, God, yeah.
Okay.
I'm fine with it. Yeah.
All right. Just checking.
I'm too old to have that argument anymore. No, there's no argument. It's, and
I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like sometimes, it's like, GIS doesn't have to be survey grade accuracy all the time, so it doesn't take a surveyor. And Nick can talk about, the equipment that they have. It's ideal for GIS mapping, in addition to survey, of course. But does that make sense? Though, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't. Surveyors get this thought in their minds like everything has to be survey grade accuracy, and it doesn't.
I think it really comes back around to purpose again. What's the
end user?
What's the end goal? What's the purpose? And even myself as a private practitioner for many years, being both a registered land surveyor and also a certified GIS professional was very interesting because I did work in both. I did professional projects, consulting work in both.
Yep.
And there were times that I had to be very critical and very careful in reviewing what they were asking me to do. What is the end goal, and what are we, doing? Because is that, am I carrying surveying liability into this task, or is this a purely GIS type of a project? And there's times it gets difficult to separate those. And, you have to work with the customer to help educate them on the differences. But, by and large, you get there. But it all comes down to really purpose.
Yep, for sure.
And that's a good segue into kind of like we always talk a little bit about technology and what's the new stuff out there. And I'm curious on your side, since you do have, both perspectives here, how do you see the future and how the technology is going to influence, GIS?
Well, the convergence that we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Where do you think that's going?
Well, from the beginning of time, technology has been a disruptor, right? I mean,
Yep.
we can rewind all the way back to, you know, the crews that were breaking down the land in our country, you know, during the public land survey system days, you know, and how
Yep.
they worked, and roll in, you know, tens more decades and look at how we're doing work, and then look in the last 20, 30 years, how are we doing work? Technology is always going to be a disruptor, and it's always going to, you know, you can look at it as the glass half full or half empty. You know, it kind of depends like how you react or perceive the change that's happening, but really it provides opportunity, you know, in one form or another. The changes that are bound to happen and will happen and are coming with new technologies will inevitably create opportunity. We all know sometimes that's a long game. I mean, if we think about how long GPS, I mean, look, if we're celebrating 50 years of GPS, right?
That's
I mean,
insane.
Yeah.
isn't that
That
crazy?
is crazy.
And you put that in perspective and think about, you know, 50 years ago, we started down this road, and here we are today, everybody running around with, you know, one of these and
Yeah.
and knowing where we are all the time. But that was a 50-year run, you know, really from beginning to now. One that I love is LiDAR, because when I was still an undergrad, I remember standing at a trade show as a student, and one of the first scanners was there. And I'm like, oh my God, look at this, you know, this is amazing. And of course,
Yeah.
we didn't have computing power that could handle it,
That's right.
but the thought and the concept was mind blowing. It's like, wow, well, here we are, you know, 20 some years later, and it's become a real reality. Like we're putting it into practice and doing it. So technology excites me. I love it because you know that there's constant, well, like I said at the beginning of the show, I love change and challenge and, you know,
Yeah.
that type of thing. So I think we're in for more and more of that. You know, talking about convergence, technology itself has matured to the point, you know, where we have, well, connectivity for one is a huge game changer. Having internet anywhere you are pretty much, or wherever you might want to be, huge change disruptor for how we work and what we can do and how we can do it. Computing power, you know, how much storage you can have. I mean, you can buy 4 terabytes in a little drive for peanuts. You know, it's amazing.
It's crazy.
And so I mean, just think what that, you know, what all that has done for us to this point. I mean, we're just stepping into the AI arena. You know, I shouldn't say we're just stepping in. Again, AI has been running around in the background for a long time, but it's becoming, you know, it's evolving. It's starting to come out and become more mainstream. So
Linda,
And I was just thinking of that when is at this point, data storage is like no longer a limitation anymore. It's like, oh my God, I'm at a hard drive space. What the heck is this? This is unacceptable. And then why don't I have a terabyte everywhere in every device? And that's
incredible.
and that happens so fast, right?
Yeah, no doubt. What do you got, Nick?
Well, I have something else, but I was going to say, you know, as long as you have iCloud, you can have as much space as you want. I mean,
right.
I turned 40 recently. I remember in the mid 90s, I got a Virtual Boy, which was virtual reality. It was a Nintendo system, and it failed within the first year. It was so terrible, and it gave you a headache. It was red. It was terrible. I literally took it back to Best Buy. Actually, it was Circuit City. They don't exist anymore. And I traded it in for a 1 chip of 64 meg RAM. Not even DDR RAM.
Oh my God.
So it was like $600 for 164. Like a gerbil runs faster than that. So you know, it's all relative to, you know, what we can do today. But Linda, you were talking about technology, and you know, we talked LiDAR and stuff like that, or INSAR, or things like that, or SAR. But I'm actually curious, in the ESRI ecosystem, is there anything interesting in the world of technology that surveyors, you know, geodesists, or even GIS people, anything you're excited about that in Cadastre, or how technology is even maybe changing the ESRI platform?
I think, yes, resoundingly. I mean, all the things we just talked about are huge game changers. You know, one that's been mainstream for quite some time now, but continues to open amazing doors is the cloud platform. Is the ability to have as much computing power and as much storage and as much accessibility as you could possibly want, and big data. Like what we can do with big data is just absolutely incredible. When you talk about, I mean, of course, at ESRI we've got the Living Atlas, and we have some big data, and it's just amazing that you can now. It's realistic to be able to take that data and do analyses and solve problems and do things that we never could have imagined, just simply for that one sheer fact that we have that availability. I think AI is going to be huge in many facets. Of course, being global, it's one of those things that not everywhere in the world is the same as we are, and so it's thinking about how other countries what can they access, what do they have the ability to use and leverage, and those types of things. And so those are all things that constantly play into you can push the tech out as far as you can possibly push it, but at the end of the day, there's kind of that backfill of knowledge, expertise, of access, those types of things that ultimately have to kind of come in and backfill. So there's always, I would say, a wide range in there of, are we looking forward, or are we kind of nurturing and maintaining, continue take care of what we already have available.
Yeah, and I think the ability to collect data has changed significantly, because it used to be you'd spend whatever $20,000-$30,000 on a GPS receiver, whereas now, plug for Bad Elf, Nick talks about the democratization. Did I say that word right? Of GPS and how that is changing things. So I'd like to hear both of you what your opinion of that is.
Linda, please start. Yeah, you're the guest. What do you think?
Well, I mean, short answer is yes. I mean, we have the ability to collect data like we've never been able to collect data before, both in quantity and I would say in quality as well. Again, that accessibility piece has become so much clearer for so many of us now. That was never even a possibility. Having VRN networks, having the ability to step out of your truck and get going, check into your control, and boom, we're in. I mean, you're not setting up base stations and radios and all of those workflows and things that we were used to doing. It really has. And the thing that really I ponder a lot is we can measure, we have the access to be able to measure highly accurately, more accurate than we've ever been able to measure before. The downside to that is the understanding of how to use it and what it's, what it means. And like I said early on in the show, we've become so, from a consumer standpoint, we've become so, I think, used to having location in our hands. Everyone, grandma, grandpa, your brother, sister, your whatever, that's not in the profession or the industry, are using their phones for spatial things every day, for Ubers, for dinner deliveries, for finding the restaurant you want to go to. It's everybody has location in their hands. But the thing that I see so frequently, and especially when you drill up in deeper into what we all do in the geospatial arena, is a deeper understanding of where that location is originating and what it means. That's where it starts to get interesting for me, and where I wouldn't say it scares me, but it makes me give some pause to the fact that location, is in everybody's hands. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's great. But it does have some consequences too, potentially.
Yeah, two things.
Nick, what are your thoughts?
You have to go a little further on that. Like, what are those? What do the consequences look like when everyone has location in their hands?
I turn mine off. I don't want anybody to know where I am.
Really?
Yeah.
So,
you of all people?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I think I can kind of address that, Sean. Maybe just my opinion, and for Linda. So recently I was on this a discussion group called the Geospatial Connections, and I was making a plug that we have a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning, and we have all these really neat technologies and quantum computing coming down the pipeline. What's happening because of the computing power is a lot of the analysis of these big data, the big, large sample training data sets, they're now being analyzed and reviewed by non-geospatial people. So you get a computer science degree and a CS degree, and you go learn how to program, and you get hired on by whatever company that asks you to go use data to create apps, and you don't care about location. You care about math inside of a program. So the problem becomes in the GIS world, for an example, and in land surveying for some degree, we've been analyzed like geographers. Let's just say geographers. Like we've been analyzing the earth for a long time. And so we bring a whole expertise of place and space and topology and these understandings of geodesy, but even cultural geography. And I'm just afraid that if we don't stay on top of it as the geospatial professionals, people that have no business analyzing geospatial are going to do it. And then what could be missed? So yeah, we collect all these data, but who's analyzing it, and are they making all the connections that we should be making, and are they looking at it from a spatial perspective? The other thing, going back to your question, Kent, was on the GPS and that democratization. I was on the horn today with what you would call it in the ESRI land, like a tier 3 city. So this is a city in like the 80 to 100,000 person range. And this is actually a very big, popular city. If I named it, you would know it right away, but and probably have been there. But they were talking to me because we're looking to roll out a large solution for them beyond just hardware. But you know, they have like 16 divisions within the city, and they all need something different. The garbage man needs to have enough accuracy to know that they're in the lane in the road. The guy going and collecting the tree at a park needs to have a whole different setup. And the surveyor that's hitting that subsurface utility engineering in the right of way to bring fiber in for equitable fiber under beads, like the broadband stuff, like they need to be at a centimeter. And so we are, for the first time, able to like put the right tool for the right trade, and it all can go out there, and it no longer is like a $40,000 gig. I mean, like I was like this past weekend, I was out at my property with my wife, and I threw this up on LinkedIn, and I think you saw it, Kent, but I was flying my drone. My drone's like $700, you know, like, and the amount of data now, I'm like, if I fly at 150 feet, I have a 1/4 of an inch resolution. I can create a 45 billion points for my piece of crap property. And it's like, why? Who cares? And then you start to look at it, and the spatialness all gets wonky. But my point is, for $700, you can go collect a whole lot of data, right? So that I'm kind of digressing in the two different fronts, but I think to summarize, I would like to see geospatial people stay involved with the analysis of data that has spatialness attached to it. And I think it's a very neat place to be, where we're collecting data at different varying levels based on the need and the industry, the person. And then also we're collecting data in mass quantity as well. So like the idea of a smart city, where cities of the future are going to run off of location-based devices and cameras and sensors, and you know, everything's going to be dictated on an algorithm based on live data feeds. That comes inherently with collecting data, and whether it's from a satellite or from, you know, drive through the city and tell me a traffic stop that doesn't have a camera attached to it. You know, you attach a photo recognition software to that, you could start mapping traffic patterns. You know what I mean? You could immediately start doing so many things. So it's an interesting place. I mean, I think, Linda, you've talked about, you know, we're in this kind of fusion of all geospatial things all of a sudden. And it's just a neat place to be.
It is.
So where does it go? Okay, so we're going to fuse all these things. What do you see?
Who's going to be the grand poobah of geospatial data? Who's that going to be?
We might be talking to her, but
I'd vote for Linda.
I'd vote for Linda.
Totally.
Yes.
But you know, so we know what the you know Nick did a really good job of talking about what you can do with some of that fusion.
Yeah.
Where do you assume that we're fused?
Yeah.
What do you think that?
Where are we
like,
trying to
Linda?
get to? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think that looks like? And you, I believe, have a very unique perspective on it.
I think ultimately what that looks like, and again, I always step backward. I kind of step back and look at my experience thus far, because again, you can look ahead and I mean, just be blown away by the possible, right? We all know we're heading into some incredible times. We're heading into some things that we can't even imagine yet. I mean, there's things underway that just I get totally excited about that probably won't go into production for another 5 years, maybe 10 years. But that being said,
and by the
think
way,
about,
I wanted some specifics on those after you get done speaking. But please continue.
He's like, I need to go buy some stock in these companies. He's got Robin Hood up and he's going at it.
gonna dig one bite at a time. So, but yeah, so it's an interesting thing because if where I think we're all headed is how do we better manage our built and natural worlds at the end of the day? Because when you just go all the way back in time for surveyors, from the beginning of time, think about how much we could survey as human beings with the tools we had.
Yeah.
It took a long time to survey, and I mean, it blows me away when I retrace, as a land surveyor, the PLSS notes of those crews and those surveyors. It absolutely blows my mind what they were able to do and how much ground they covered. But put that in perspective versus what we know we can do now from a data collection standpoint. But one thing that I like to kind of think about, and I think is something we really need to work on, and that is data is really, spatial data to me is an infrastructure. It's a critical infrastructure. And okay, here we are in this time in our country where we're investing like we've probably never invested before in new infrastructure. We have a unique opportunity right now to capture digitally that asset. And to me, that's every bit as much important as it is putting that pipe in the ground or paving that highway or whatever it is you're doing in the project. And in the past, we've always kind of looked at those in bite-sized pieces. We did a project, we shelved it. We did a project, we shelved it. Oh, we as-built it. Well, that's red pen on a set of plans, right? So where it's headed, I think, is systems upon systems that can talk to each other and that we can look at in broader perspective, rather than go into one public works department, for instance, and start digging through their records. Maybe that's in filing cabinets. We're doing better. We're getting a lot of that out of filing cabinets and maybe scanned. We have a lot of investment locked up in paper still. And in the generation that's retiring, we have so many individuals who worked for decades in the same agencies, and that knowledge is up here and it's retiring. It's walking out the door. And huge amount of our legacy information or knowledge about our world, about our built world, and those types of things. We have an opportunity to recapture or to capture that and do a better job moving forward. That's not an easy problem to solve because technology is very capable, but there's a lot of people, a lot of policy, a lot of systems and things that have to be in place. But I think ultimately where we're headed is, comprehensive systems of systems that can talk to one another and that we can easily access and make better decisions with. I mean, at the end of the day. And, I've always had a thought about, all the data that like I said, is locked up. Think of the value for those of us that have worked in consulting. Think of all of the time you spend on the front end of a design project. Where do you go? You go pull legal records, you pull land records, you pull easements, deeds. Every job you do, you start over and you go through the same pattern, the same process. Imagine if all of that information was right at your fingertips and you had you could accelerate that from a time standpoint, and think of the money savings too.
You're starting to broach into. I mean, you do need to make a living, Kent. And if
who me?
Yeah, and if there was and if it was all at your fingertips, your proposal just went this big to this big.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll be part of the solution, though.
Sure.
Of making everything available at your fingertips.
And this goes to a conversation we've had before. Okay, so in that scenario, that same process now is not a $20,000 survey. Is it still a $20,000 survey, even though half of it doesn't need hours anymore.
Yeah.
It's, oh, I pushed this button and I have all that at my fingertips, like Linda said. So, Linda, I'm interested in your perspective, given what you just said, in the consulting world and all of this great stuff. What would that look like if, like you said, instead of having to go through all the records to build that, whatever it is, boundary or put it back together, if it was right there, should that cost be half, or how do we, I mean, I'm opening a question, but how do we account for that? And what does that look like going forward if and when, I shouldn't say if, when it is at our fingertips and there's no more paper records to recreate the boundary. So, for example,
I think it's like anything. It'll evolve.
Hold on 1 second. That was the longest question ever.
I know I'm working on my long questions. But please.
Sorry. Go ahead, Linda.
I forgot what was the question. No, just kidding.
let me start over.
I'll see how good your memory is, or mine for that matter. It's a great question, but I think it's one of those, at least from my perspective at this point in time, I view it as more of an evolution. Our fee structures will probably change. That'll probably look different. But I don't think that it's necessarily anything to be scared of. In a way, I think it's a positive, because think of all of the time that you would potentially free up to do more or something different or added service. Maybe now, because you're not burning so much budget on recreating the wheel every time, you can add on or enhance or do more with that customer, provide better value, greater value is how I look at it. If you don't have to go through and do those tasks every time. And I get a lot of people that say, oh, AI is coming for us, it's all over, it's going to take our jobs. It's not going to take our jobs. It's going to change our jobs. It's going to change how we do our jobs. We still need an individual to carry liability, if nothing else, the way we currently practice as land surveyors in this country. But even if you don't have to do all of that time-consuming work anymore, it frees you up to do maybe better and different things, maybe more. And where we do have we know we have a deficit in the workforce in land surveying right now. We know we do. We're retiring out more than we're bringing in. So I think those are positive opportunities, quite honestly, to be able to work more efficiently, and maybe you're able to put out more projects.
I love that perspective. That's awesome. Yeah. Great perspective. But the thing is, we have to adopt the technology. Don't shun it. Don't be stubborn, like a lot of surveyors are, unfortunately. Adopt that technology.
Well, and I was even thinking to what Linda was saying, not necessarily the surveyors that are being stubborn, but you mentioned building new infrastructure. It's that municipality, and
they should welcome.
And maybe Linda, talk a little bit about your experience and how do we get the municipality to adopt the, I probably want a terrestrial scan of this project instead of now it's a PDF with red marks on it, but still, how's that experience going in changing the discourse on or what the cities can accept?
But I also think on that note that the deliverables are changing.
Sure.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. They very much are. And this is part of that complex web I kind of alluded to earlier in, you can push the limit all the way out 20 miles from a technology standpoint, but what you have to really work on then is what comes in behind. And that's exactly what we're talking about now. How do we get the government agencies to embrace, adopt, be open to these changes? And there's a lot of factors in it because, one, we've talked about it tonight. Aging workforce, what generation of individual is in a decision-making role, perhaps in that agency or organization? That will probably have some bearing or impact. Change, generally, there has to be a catalyst for change in my experience. Sometimes people are very progressive, or you have the right individual that's pretty forward-thinking, and they'll take it and run. They'll do it just on their own. Other times there has to be some kind of a catalyst for that change to happen. So, maybe that's regulatory, maybe that's policy, maybe that's financial. Maybe, hey, we've gotten half of our staffing budget X, and now we got to figure out how to do more with less. And that's happened a lot in the last few years. People are all of a sudden going, we cannot physically do all of the work we need to do. We have to find a way to do it differently.
Right.
And so those are all things that play into it. And one of the things that's intriguing to me from an as-builting perspective, for instance, that's a piece of this that when you look at how an infrastructure project gets built from cradle to grave, when you are out on the front end planning, and then you're surveying it, then you're designing it, then you're bidding it. Well, we're seeing a lot of change in how that's even happening. We used to be design, bid, build models in our projects. That was how I came up through the ranks in building projects. Then, when I was getting later in my consulting career, things were starting to change to design, build. So we're stepping up the pace. We want to move these through faster. Construction manager at risk type contract models were starting to come in. What that does is it changes how the pieces of the project get done. And so think about where did as-builting always fall traditionally? On the contractor generally, right? Quite often. There's a very specific contracting mechanism that kind of drives how that gets done and who does it. Those are things that will have to shift or change. And I think we're seeing it now with just like I said, the contracting mechanisms even in our industry are changing. And that will, I think, inherently help probably encourage these delivery mechanisms to evolve into something, more modernized, if you will.
Yeah.
You mentioned like cloud, the cloud infrastructure and collaboration connectivity. I see, a lot of deliverables now, instead of having to, print out your 24x36, and roll it up in your case and roll down to the city, you can submit these things online, your review process online. Like you mentioned, it's speeding up the whole, A to Z soup to nuts process.
It really is. And, the other part of that, of course, comes back around to liability. And that's something that we're, I think as an industry, we're still working through. When you submit a set of plans, there's something physical and static there. You can lock it up with a bow, stamp it, sign it, seal it. And, whether that's a PDF or that's a roll of paper, what have you, there's some finality there to that product. I think we have to, we're shifting how we're thinking about that. And when you deliver digital data and you carry liability as a land surveyor or design professional, how do you ensure that data, how do you lock up that liability, if you will? How do you keep that, integrity intact, if you will? And so, the industry is really working hard on that right now and figuring out, I envision a time when whoever is doing the construction observation perhaps is in the field. Maybe they're doing the as-builting while they're out there, depending who has the contractual obligation.
What she said. We've talked about that. Yeah.
The democratization of scanning, right? Because the cost of scanners are coming down to the point now where anybody can have one, right? Just why not set up a scanner and do your thing, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it could be the surveyor, they're doing the as-builting for them. They're standing there with a connection. They could be sending that data back to the customer in real time. And then it would probably sit like in a version for review, or, it would need to be reviewed and approved, obviously, but to go through its checks. But I think we're there in the capability. It's figuring out how do we, contractual obligation, liability, all of those things that go along with how we do work.
Yeah. And it's like, who's going to be the trailblazer? You know what I mean?
Well, and I mean, we all want to be the trailblazer, but there is a point of equity. It still needs to be equitable for all of the consultants to be able to provide as-built for a government agency. And if all of a sudden the government agency is like, you know what, I'm only going to accept a point cloud file from a terrestrial scan for as-builts going forward.
There you go.
Well, that just locked out, 20% of the consultants. Well, I can't afford that.
Yeah.
Or they're not ready, but some people would think, okay, that's a good thing, but are you really being equitable for the community as a whole when the one guy in his garage still needs the same shot as the other guy?
Yeah.
That, and this just came up recently of I want to a lot of the shift in liability is from that construction observation person onto the surveyor to as-built something that is really the inspector's job. but the inspector wants the measurements, and I can only as-built measurements. But I can as-built. But I can verify something was installed. The surveyor as-built measurements, and that's supposed to all come together. And that gets shifted around to the city saying, no, I want the surveyor to tell me that is per the detail. Well, I can to a point. And what will eliminate all of that is scan the whole thing. You want to know how wide the road is at any one spot? You got it.
You got it. Right. Why not?
But then how do we get from where we're at now, where, like Linda's saying, the technology is definitely there. How do we blaze
the
through
workflow and the acceptance?
the acceptance.
That's the challenge.
And then how, I think Linda mentioned it earlier, how do we connect those systems so they build the bridge next to that with a different contractor, and it now crossed over the city lines? How does that still, and then we may create more of a problem because, well, sorry, that one was scanned and that's still on a piece of paper.
We're going to make Sean a surveyor yet. He can talk the talk as good as anybody.
Kicking and screaming. Actually, I think I'm more interested in GIS, but
I don't blame you.
All the fun, no liability.
Exactly. I love it. I
didn't just say that. I didn't say that.
Well said, Dr. Nick.
Well, if Uber can think my house is still my neighbor's house, then I like that level of accuracy versus.
Well, don't forget, I already bought your house in the metaverse.
Oh, that's right.
So you're living on borrowed time.
I am. Eventually you'll be my landlord.
Oh man, so funny. I could talk about this topic forever, but we got to move along here. And I do have a couple of things I want to make sure that I ask Linda about. One of the things is I was really excited to see that you are your state facilitator for the for NGS, for the LDP, for the up and coming SPC 2022.
Yes,
2024. Right?
Upcoming 2022. Oh, how
I know. But this is
yet to come.
Opportunity
coming soon.
For me to ask somebody who's on the inside, what is the status of this?
Can I get a quick? Give me the Wikipedia version of what you just said and what it is.
No. Go ahead, Linda.
Dang it.
So at the core of what you're asking is about the National Geodetic Survey's NSRS, National Spatial Reference System Modernization, which is an effort that has been underway for, I think, gosh, what's it been, a decade at least. And this really cuts to the core of what I was alluding to earlier when I said, we all take for granted where things are. We all know where we are. We all know where things are. But do we really know where they are and what are they relative to? So why is the NGS doing this NSRS? What's really going on here? And I get this, God, it's kind of like, the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Whatever that leadership book, Change, Why Are We Changing? And those of us that work in geospatial know you are list of coordinate systems and projections, and I don't know which one to pick. And well, that dictates where our data lands, right? When we're working with it and where it really is that matters. So what the NGS
Linda,
is doing.
Which one is hem and which one is haw? Sean is hem and Kent is haw. Which one is refusing to go get the cheese because he's fat on the cheese he's already got?
That's a good one.
Careful how you answer this, Linda.
Careful, Linda.
I'll defer. Let's get back. So what's is as everything that we've been talking about tonight is about evolution, it's about fusion, it's about convergence. The same is said for, we have, from a geodesy standpoint in our country, we have essentially a framework that we work off of. That when we go out in the field with our GNSS, our GPS, what is it, relative to? What's it based on? When we are working in state plane coordinates, what is that based on? Well, what's going on right now is that the current datums we're working on, there's a bit of a shift, if you will. So it's not truly centered, it's not Earth-centered, Earth-fixed, if you will, for simple terms. And when you think about satellites, what are satellites using as their control point, quote unquote. What are they relative to? So essentially what the NGS is doing is updating our datums to be in better alignment, if you will. So there's a slight tilt, there's a slight rotation, angle. They're taking care of that, they're fixing that. And then at the same time, we have the opportunity to create low distortion projection zones in our states for work in the state plane coordinate system. Well, what does this mean? Why do we have all of these? Why do we care? Why do we need to care? And so for those of us that have worked in infrastructure, worked with the design side of things through time, really going to a low distortion projection, you're trying to get that scale factor down to 1 as close as you can get it.
Yeah.
You don't want any distortion. That's the goal. You don't want to have the contractor have to apply a scale factor when he's building. And so the NGS, along with the NSRS modernization went, hey, here's the opportunity to update our state plane coordinate system zones. Obviously, they didn't have the horsepower to do that. And also, I think, and rightly so, they felt that it really should be tackled by the stakeholders themselves, or those of us out in the field practicing in a given area, state, region. And so, huge undertaking. I mean, my hat's off to the NGS in taking this on, because absolutely amazing amount of work that went into this, each state that's participated. So from my state's perspective, when this started to come around, I went, man, we would be really remiss to not jump on the wagon and try to participate right now. Why do I say that? Well, because this is probably the only opportunity, at least in my lifetime, that I can foresee we'll have a wholesale opportunity to be part of the national framework, if you will. And so what does that mean? Well, you can create low distortion projection anytime. I mean, there's states out there that use them now locally, they're using them. What it means, though, with the NGS is that all of the vendors, my company included, the big rigs that everybody's relying on and using, will have those definitions in the software and in the hardware, and they'll be standardized and they'll be accessible. And it's a little bit scary because we're going from something like 160 some to 900 and some odd zones last I heard across the country. But yeah, so really that's the reason that I was motivated to do it, is I saw a small window of opportunity for our state to participate in this and improve how we work, especially from a design and construction standpoint. Our DOT was a huge champion and part of us getting this moved forward in our state. But like I said, surveyors will be practicing against this for, like I said, probably the rest of my lifetime or career.
No, I think the end goal is amazing, and getting that point would be incredible. And you mentioned the number of zones. I think in Arizona, it's like 40 zones maybe we're up to, or something like that. And that's just because our state has a lot of relief in it, right? But I think some of the flatter, center of the country type states, probably, I don't know, you could probably speak to that, Linda. I mean, the number of zones aren't nearly that much.
Our state's 26, and we're the eastern side of the state's relatively flat. We have the Black Hills area, of course, that has a pretty substantial amount of relief in it. But we're 26 zones is where we ended up with our designs.
And how many did you have prior to this modeling? 2. Oh, really?
We had a north zone and a south zone.
Wow. Well, Arizona only had 3, right? East, west, central. So
Linda, do you get a sense if you had to put an over or under and make a bet, throw $100 into the ring, when do you think it actually gets implemented? Jokes aside.
So from my experience, and I've been pretty closely involved with it, where the process is right now is, like, for us, for instance, we have finalized design. So those parameters are, essentially, we actually just finished the final check of our designs. Now, the NGS has released, I believe they released it back in July, the alpha site. So you can actually go out there right now and check out every state's alpha zones, if you will, the parameters, the zone boundaries, where they are, what's going on in your state. And I would encourage everybody to do that. It's in GIS. It's a web GIS app. And, one of the questions I get all the time is like, oh, we've got all these zones. How am I going to know what zone I'm working in?
Right.
That app you can pull up on your phone, hit your location services, walk out your door, and you can see which zone you're standing in. I mean, it's a pretty cool, we have tools and ways today that to deal with some of these things that we wouldn't have had in the past. And so the NGS is doing a great job at trying to get it out there. My fear is I think people are still in that, it's not out yet, whatever. I'm not going to worry about it or think about it. Let me know when it's actually final. We're very close. I would say 2024, what we've been told is it'll go through government review, the regulatory and standards bodies will be moving those things through. And then once the stamp gets put on those, then it'll be real time.
Yeah.
So I think sometime this year, or by the end of this year at least, probably we'll be ready to roll. I know the big vendors, at least. I know NGS has put a tremendous amount of effort into working with vendors to be ready.
SPC 2022 will come out before the complete deprecation of ArcMap. I'm gonna hold you to this. I'm putting it in my journal.
No comment.
No comment.
No, by the end of the year,
awesome.
that would be fantastic. Do you think we'll have a high adoption rate? I mean, there are.
Great question.
We had agencies in Arizona that were still running NAD 27. So
exactly.
Well, and that's where we have the work is. I mean, as arduous as it was, believe me, because I was heavily involved in the design of our zones and that process. Now that the math is all behind us or whatever, the big job is just beginning, and that is to educate our user communities, and that's everybody. I mean, that's educating surveyors, GIS professionals, photogrammetrists, anybody that's in the geospatial industry. And like we've talked all night tonight about high accuracy, we can measure with high accuracy and those types of things. Well, this conversation comes right into it because we have to really understand what we're working in, what we've defined our work in, good metadata, and then we haven't even really talked about the dynamic nature of these new datums, and that is now we have time and movement factored into what's going on. And so that is a piece of it. Most people stop at the, how many zones did you say we're going to have? And you don't even get a chance to open the door about the dynamic nature of these datums, because that is really hard for a lot of people to get their minds around. What does that mean? What do I do? How do I do it? So we're just in the very early stages of figuring out how to, how are we going to handle all the legacy data that's out there that may or may not have decent metadata. There's going to be a lot of work to be done, but I think the biggest thing that, my hope is in the industry is that we can get some good baseline education out across the industry, awareness, if nothing else. Stop and think about what you're doing, how you're doing it. If you don't know, ask someone who can help you out. Because the last thing we want to do is collect a whole bunch of high accuracy data that's really not, because we don't know enough about it. When we go to use it 5 years from now, if we don't have critical pieces of metadata, we've lost the value of that information, because now we don't have what we need to use it, in a prudent manner, if you will. And when you talk about high accuracy, that stuff really starts to matter, and I'm sure we'll have a big job in the GIS community in education as well, because for so long it's like, that's good enough for GIS. It's like, well, when we start talking about digital twin and the fact that we can have high accuracy data, we need to be a little more careful about that and not be quite so flip and say, it's just GIS, we shouldn't care about that. Well, we all really should care about it. And again, what we're trying to do with it. So
that's interesting. That's
a lot to happen here in the next 10 years.
That's the first time I've heard someone talk about the GIS world getting closer to having to pay attention to accuracy. It's usually exactly what Linda said. Like, don't worry about it. It's just GIS. It's a wide marker, so it doesn't really matter. But
just change the line type width. Make
exactly.
that line really fat.
Just make it a little wider. It'll be fine, right? But as that convergence, it's all going to have to be essentially the same. And I don't think the term survey grade is just even going to be a thing in 10 years. It's just going to be. This is where it is.
This is it.
Yeah,
that's the spot.
And I have a term I like to say, the high cost of underutilized data. I want people to think about that, because the high cost of underutilized data.
I like that.
So if we're not
So
careful in how we collect our data and how we document our data, I mean, that's fundamental 101 of anything, surveying, GIS, you name it, is good metadata. And if you don't do those very simple tasks, you've eroded the value of that data. And there's a high cost to that. And it kind of circles back to what we talked about earlier. Repetitive, constant, having to deal with, research, pull the same information over and over and over again. It's the same thing. If you go out and collect data and you intend to put it into a system for use years and years into the future, but it doesn't have the right metadata or enough metadata, really it loses its value.
Yeah, man. That's a great point.
Really is.
We're running a little bit long here, but I do have one other question I want to ask you about.
Sure.
So you wrote an article, The Power of Not.
I was wondering where that came from.
And I read it today, and I thought it was genius. So I would like for you to talk about it just a little bit.
So that really just, I don't know, I guess maybe I had too much time on my hands over the holidays or something, decompressing, I don't know. But just, in reflecting back across my career and thinking about, I'm a different duck. I mean, I'll admit it. I'll read the magazine
you're a
backwards.
Surveyor, so
that
explains that.
Kind of contrary anyway, but just reflecting on how did I end up where I am? Because as you guys can see, my journey's been interesting, I guess, to a degree.
Winding, as I would refer
winding,
to it.
winding, and really and truly, it's very simple. I can look back and go, it was all decisions, and our lives are all decisions. Each one of us, that's our journey, that's our path. And it's how you look at those decisions that I've come to realize really is where a lot of power is held. And I've often been one that went, why not? Why not try this? Why not give it a shot? Maybe it'll be painful and fail. And especially in the consulting world or earlier in my career, I mean, I'm a curious person. And so I like to tinker. I like to try things out. I like to push the envelope. But many, many, many times through my life, I mean, I've been met head on with the why. Why are you doing this? Why would we do this? Why should we do this? Why? And I was like, why not? What do we have to lose? Obviously you have to weigh that, but that's where the power of not comes from. Add the not onto why when you're asking that question.
Yep.
Why not? Let's do it.
That is right up our alley.
I love it. All right. Hey, that's all I got. What do you guys got?
Well, I always ask this question, and I think you just said it. So I'll ask it, and you can say it again. Do you have a mantra that you live by?
Oh boy.
And is it why not?
No.
Okay.
My family would say I have one, and you'll have to wait for me to die and let them carve it on my tombstone to find out what it is. But no, in all seriousness, it'd probably be till you can't. I've always been a person and that's a little bit cliche. There's a song, Cody Johnson song, Till You Can't. But it's the way I've always lived. And it's like, well, throttle to the floor until you can't anymore. I mean, you keep going in a direction until you can't, and then you change and adapt and you keep going again.
I bet Linda's pretty fun on a Saturday night. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
In a nerdy sort of way, right?
Hey, that's okay. That's all right. We're gonna process some mad data on a Saturday night
Until we can't.
Until we can't.
Until literally the computer blue screens of death.
Takes the edge off of designing LDPs.
That's great.
Oh, it sounds like so much fun.
What about you, Nick? What else you got? Anything?
No, I think this was great. I really like the discussion on the future coordinate system. It does pop up quite a bit, in my travel. So hearing, and Linda, you talk about it pretty positively, in some shadowy corners, it's not as positively spoken about, but it's nice to hear the other side of it. And it is exciting because at the end of the day, it's going to make the entire system better. Yeah. Is it going to be hard? And is it, like you mentioned, technology is disruptive. Just random side tangent. I saw the other day, did you know in Rome, they had a point of beginning point that in the center of Rome, all measurements on every Roman map went back to that central POV point, that one monument. I thought that was so cool. That's 2,000 years old. So
Awesome.
if they could figure out a datum 2,000 years ago, we got this. So, no, Linda, I really appreciate you coming on and keep.
And if there's a positive note to end on coordinate systems, I would say this. The coordinate system modernization is what's going to allow us to get to that vision that we talked about of cohesive systems of systems being able to talk to one another. I liken it to language. You know, if you're sitting in a room with someone who speaks French and Spanish and German, well, you have to know what each other is speaking in order to translate it. And, you know, it's the same thing in spatial sense as well. And that will help us all, quote unquote, be on the same page and able to talk to one another spatially.
So Nick, I got a suggestion for you. When you have those conversations with the naysayers saying
in the dark corners,
like, why do we have to change this again? Just simply say, why not?
There it is.
Except my wife's like, why are you in the dark corners? What are you doing?
That's where I hang.
Why not?
Why would I not be in the dark corners?
Because I got to bring light.
Awesome.
No, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, Linda, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation.
Absolutely.
I have really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me, you guys. It was a pleasure.
You bet. We'll do it again for sure.
Sounds great.
Right. Adding value, making friends.
Again,
check that box.
Right.
If anyone would like to be a guest on a future show, or if you have any guest suggestions, shoot us an email at info@thegeoholics.com. We'd love to hear from you. Jelly Roll, need a favor. Available everywhere. Until next time, everyone. I got a few notes here.
I'm sure you do.
Technology creates opportunity. Technology has matured over the last 50 years, but I haven't.
Clearly.
Be a catalyst for change. Think about the high cost of unutilized data. Go from why to why not. And most importantly, as always, be safe and healthy. Boom.
Well done.
That was awesome. Really enjoyed that. That was great.
Hey, thanks again.
Yeah.